Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively into a new year and into a new off-season for Ravens football around here. We'll be doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour next week. We're going to be in Catonsville with our friends at State Fair and Beaumont and El Guapo and Evan and all of them, and picking up some pieces from the 21228 as we begin the new year before the Super Bowl and as we begin into Lamar Jackson sweepstakes. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery. I'll have some Ravens scratch-offs to give away next Friday in Catonsville, as well as our friends at Window Nation, 866-90 Nation. You buy two, you get two free. And you get 60 months. That's 5 years, 0% financing. That's even a better deal than they gave me, so it's a pretty good deal. I love when I have friends on the program, and this guy is Bill Cole from Cole Roofing. I have the Cole Roofing mug and the Royal Farms in here. By the way, Billy, I usually wear a shirt where the logo is above the nipple, and the Drug City shirt is actually lower. So I have to always hold it up. You're not a Dundalk guy, right? So,
Nah.
where did you grow up? Are you Southwest Baltimore? Because it feels to me like that's where your business was, right?
Yeah, that's the big real. Yeah, well, that was always started in '97. So I grew up like Perry Hall, White Marsh. My great grandparents' house was in Hamilton, so like White Avenue and Bel Air Road. That was we kind of were there and then moved our way out.
Everybody's Baltimore experience really is how far from Memorial Stadium or the Civic Center or Harbor Place, right? Like the key places, how far you may have been from the mall in our era, like where you're from. But even when the Ravens moved here and Kevin Byrne came here, he said the thing that everybody in Baltimore identifies himself when they say, where are you from? It's where you went to high school. Or if you went to Curley, you'd say, I'm from Highlandtown, but I went to Curley, or I went to Catholic High, or I went to Calvert Hall, or wherever you would go, right? I find it interesting that being from Dundalk, right, there's such a stigma. And I don't mean that in any – people don't make fun of Catonsville or even Arbutus, although Jimmy Schwartz, congratulations on getting the Browns job this week. But people don't make fun of places like they do Dundalk. And I often wonder – because I'll say to somebody uptown from Towson or whatever, where the rich people lived when I was a kid, I'd say, you ever been to Dundalk? You ever and they'd be like, well, I have an uncle that, I went to Squires once, or I went to – I had a Captain Harvey's cheesesteak once in the 80s or whatever. So, did you ever did you know about Drug City? Because there's nobody in Dundalk that doesn't know about Drug City. But I am thinking, if you grew up in Hamilton, maybe you don't know about Drug City and you just cackle because it's a funny name,
Correct. That's pretty much what I do. I have no idea about Drug City, so I laugh at the name. And
see that? You're that guy?
I am definitely that guy. I mean,
all right, well, it's good that I'm telling you the Drug City story, because Drug City's like this legendary place that is only like Drug City, and you'd have to go. And it's a shame you can't experience some of the old things, but they have this fountain now. They're bringing back some of the greatest hits from the old days. They're not going to bring back the videotapes and the X-rated, they're not bringing any of that back. In the wrestling magazines, they're definitely not bringing those back. But some of the old school candies and stuff are still there, and you should go to Drug City. So there's my Baltimore positive thing for you.
All right, I like it. I'll have to put it on the list.
I'm doing the show there March 3rd. So before we get into Ravens, did you have a special teacher in your life? Do you have someone who was alive or is alive, gym teacher, principal, somebody like Don Moeller was to me in your life?
I felt bad about this. I actually got to conversate with your wife about this last week or whatever when we were all together. But it's there are teachers who definitely were more influential than others. There are teachers' names that I remember not for good reasons, so they'll remain nameless. And then
Bill Cole, please report to the principal's office.
Right.
Bill Cole.
My stories are more about coaches, right? I spent more time on the field or in the gym.
Okay, those were your mentors. Fair enough.
Coaches, and then each one of them I can look back fondly and say, oh, that's why I think it's okay to scream my head off at my daughters when I'm coaching basketball. That guy gave me the ability to even though I'm getting, me and my 10-year-old had this discussion last night about little girls talking trash and how it's messing with her. She's not, it's and I'm no, you don't understand this. Yeah, you might not like it, but this is part of the game. So we had a wonderful, mental toughness conversation last night.
How old is she?
10.
Okay.
10, man. I was
well, they're on the internet. They, I mean, I'm talking about the
Oh,
X-rated section over at Drug City.
uh,
These kids today, I
yeah.
mean, they've got to have skin like an armadillo, as Rex Ryan once said to me.
And my wife, she didn't play any sports as a kid, so she's like, "Oh, that's totally unacceptable. I can't believe that those kids talk." I'm like, "Holy cow, you have no idea. Like, this is what it is. Like it's been going on since the beginning of time when they were like throwing rocks at each other. Like you just they people look for any advantage they can in a competitive sport, and it's not it's borderline on like bad sportsmanship, right? Depending on how personal it gets. But the idea of walking on the court and going to the player that you're opposing and saying, "Hey, I just want you to know, like, I'm the best defensive player on my team, and I told them I was going to guard you because you're the best offensive player, and I'm about to shut you down." That concept, that's good-natured competitiveness, and now I'm in his head. Right now, he really wants to beat me now. So
Were
then
you
it's just
you
fun.
guys talking trash when you're playing checkers when you're 6 or no?
Not a trash talker, but very forthright with, "Hey, I'm the stopper. I'm coming for you. I'm going to be in your pocket all day. My name's Bill. I'm going to high five you at the end of the game, but between now and then, you're not going to touch the ball.
We're going to compete.
Well, you're just not going to touch the ball. I'm going to take you right out of this game." So
Kind of like I've done the 105.7 every year at the Super Bowl for the last 25 years. Bill Cole is here. He's Cole Roofing and Gordy Energy. So the reason I ask you about the teacher thing is I had a transcendent experience last week, and it's had a ripple effect, right? Like every day since that day, someone, and this is the nature of social media, has made me smile in some way in regard to this transcendent human being who's 82 years old. I don't want to say I haven't thought about Mr. Statham in 30 years because I have a lot. I hit his son on Facebook. When my mother was alive, we ran into him in the IHOP in Dundalk like 10 years ago, and we talked about getting together. And then my mother died, and my wife got cancer, and like we never got together. So this is a man that, keep in mind, so this is 1979, 80, 81. Okay, that's the time frame. I'm 10, 11, 12. I had skipped a grade. All the kids were bigger than me because I was 10 and they were 12, right? So, and I was 10 in the 7th grade, kind of strangely, right? Because I read at a high level. I was really smart when I was a kid. I don't know what happened, but so Mr. Statham was the chorus director and the music teacher. He was one of maybe 3 African American teachers in the school. There were 0 African American students in Holabird Junior High School. I'll show you them. I'll show you all 3 of my middle school or junior high school yearbooks. So this is 79, 80, 81 in that frame. And he like had a bigger class because chorus was 100 kids, and or it felt like 100, but it might have been 50 or 60. There's a lot of kids. Band was going on next door. It was a measurement to be in chorus because they had a choral event every Christmas and every spring we all had to get on the school bus, dress really nice, drive to Parkville Middle School, do our recital and sing our songs and get graded. And it was he was the most serious, demanding. And if you didn't like structure, you would hate Calvin Statham. Kids hated him, probably because he was black. It's 1979 in Dundalk, right? It's Archie Bunker still in real time. They don't have O'Connor's place yet. He's still doing real Archie at that point, right? Meathead's still bumping into him, right? So this is 1979, 80, 81. Wonderful man. Always loved him. Always loved me. Dreamed of being in his show when I was in 9th grade. He gave me a part in My Fair Lady. So fast forward 2 weeks ago, and I haven't seen Mr. Statham in 10 years. I haven't interacted with him as an adult. Okay. I've never interacted in 31 years on the radio. I have never had an adult other than running into him in the IHOP. And he and his wife were special people. So let me explain to you this. The Calvin Statham singers, gospel legends in this area, 60s, 70s, 80s, the kind of gospel act that would open at a big show, be in the undercard because they were a big local act. And they played in
gotcha.
churches throughout the region. 3 singers, soulful. You can go Google it, YouTube it. He told me that the other night, so I did, and I shared one last week. So I haven't reached to him in all these years. And a My Fair Lady ad comes on, and Ron Legler down at the Hippodrome sucking me into Baltimore positive, you know? So I get this My Fair Lady, and I said to my wife, we got to go see My Fair Lady. My wife's like, I've never seen My Fair Lady. I'm like, she said, what's it about? Oh, you don't even know what it's about. Cool. All right. So let's try to figure this out. And then I reached to Patrick, Calvin's son. Calvin's 82. And I put a note out on the internet and it went crazy. Dude, he taught at Pikesville for 10 years in the 70s. So there's a whole wing of his life that I had no idea about, including one of my partners. One of the people that owns my station was taught by Calvin Statham. He sent me a text yesterday. So every day it's this unopening box of chocolates. So I'm dragging him to Drug City. He lives in Edgemere. I'm dragging him to Drug City on March 3rd. And there's your chance to meet my chorus teacher, the legendary Calvin Statham, who's going to be my guest. He's going to break my balls. And my wife said to me, I've never seen anybody abuse you the way that man abused you for 4 hours.
All right, well, I wasn't totally sold until the end there. Now I'm probably in. Because any kind of
Mr. Statham is not demure.
I have to be around for that. Yeah.
How are you, man? How are you dealing with the aftermath of the Ravens? It's not even like a letdown, right? Like nobody expected.
Oh yeah, it is. Oh,
I
find it to be wildly disappointing. Like
okay.
I think there's like a song or something. Where did all the heroes go? Like I don't know. Like
I'm thinking about the Van Halen. Where have all the good times gone?
Okay, right? Sure.
Yeah,
that would work too.
Yeah, okay.
I wanted to go to bed. I wanted them to be down 3 touchdowns at halftime. Like I had no hope. That's not entirely true. Like, like I think you and I talked about it. Like, hey, anything can happen. But they made me watch the entire game.
And they made you believe. You thought.
Right. I did. I got vested
when the ball was going like up and about to go over.
No. I was fairly neutral at that point, but like
you weren't convinced they were going to score a touchdown when they
just prior to that
line,
snap
because you've watched the offense the last 10 weeks, right?
Just prior to that snap, I'm doing field goal analysis because reality is they lost their left tackle or whatever. They were a mess. They had ceased moving the ball. Okay, kick a field goal here, play defense, get it back, kick a field goal, play defense, get it back. Do we have time for 3 more field goals to win this game?
And you're thinking they're not the Bengals anymore. We're going to sack Burrow, or he's going to throw the ball up to Marcus Peters.
Yeah.
And we're going to pull off the shock of the world the way the Giants beat the Vikings.
So, right. So, I mean, they were sort of a wounded duck at that point, and all they were trying to do was run the clock and get to the end of the game. I also believe that James Prochet the third, or whatever he is, had a chance to have a clip that would have been shown at the Hall of Fame forever. On part of that, playoff glory reel.
Jacoby Jones too.
Yes. Like all those crazy things that happen in the playoffs that you never would expect. You know what I mean? That the chance of it happening is 1 in a billion. It was a very hard catch. I get it. Never happens. That's what makes it 1 in a billion. But it don't get much closer than you getting.
See, the thing for me is when the ball hits the ground, I am like, they weren't going to beat Kansas City anyway. You know what I mean? Like there's a part for me, I'm not thinking like I used to think, which is bus trip, Super Bowl, fun, that. If this team loses, we could actually host the championship game because we're the higher. Right. You like, all of that had gone away, and especially Lamar tweeting out extensive reports of his grade 2, almost 3 injury. I didn't think Lamar was coming back either, right? I just, the mojo around this team was, to me, as a fan, as a citizen, as a journalist, shut it down. You weren't winning, and now figure out what you're going to do to win the next time, because and I think that's what they're doing now, and that's why, NFL Network is on the air, bro, 8 a.m. the morning after the game, sending him to the Jets, right? Vegas has numbers on sending him to it's amazing how quickly this has gone from Lamar's our guy to they don't want Lamar and Lamar doesn't want them.
do you think that it was Lamar's decision to not go to Cincinnati, or do you think the Ravens told him, why don't you just stay home?
I think I'm guessing, okay. I don't
Yeah, I
have
get
any
it.
inside
I understand.
information on
Right,
this, right?
right.
Because John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta don't speak to me. Although in the old days, I probably would have figured it out, right? I mean,
Right.
I had enough people, and there's still enough people there to I really want to poke around. I'm much more like eating the popcorn, like Michael Jackson in Thriller.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
much more like, oh, well, if first off, it won't be an NFL insider that reports anything other than the Ravens side, right? So if Ian, and I know how the politics of this works. So whoever reports it, this is like Jeff Barker in The Sun. If he reports it just because John Angelo's talked to him in the middle of the night, told him what to write, and he wrote it, right? And by the way, John Angelo's another story. Write that down so we get to that because they made some news this week too. But in regard to the Lamar Jackson situation, my gut is to me, and I only have a little piece of this. The piece is, and I'll be full disclosure. Harbaugh was really displeased with Lamar Jackson missing OTAs. How do I know that? It's in my phone.
Right.
So when Lamar and I were on Twitter back in May and he missed the OTA week, John wasn't happy. And I would think if John's not happy, that probably doesn't make Steve or Eric happy or Greg Roman happy. And if John's unhappy and a former journalist, at that point I was still a journalist, would know about it, and the coach would want me to know about it in May,
Right.
and then they're
Right.
throwing me out in
Right.
July. It's bizarre, dude. Like, all of this is bizarre. The whole
Right.
Lamar thing's bizarre, but I would say the WTF on draft night, probably not good. Missing OTAs really didn't make Harbaugh happy, right? Like, 'cause you're really not showing leadership, and you're like, you're the guy, right?
You're trying to break the bank, but you're not doing it.
The
Right.
negotiation with Eric had always portrayed it to me as being, cordial, but a little awkward, but like, I don't think Eric ever thought they weren't going to get a deal done, right?
Right.
I think this started with unavailability last year, gives me the yips, gives me the shakes, kind of like a tropical storm if I have a house in Hatteras, right? I get a little like, maybe maybe the second storm won't be good, right?
Right.
WTF, when he knew what was going on, playing the social media game of pay me, putting up, I want to be paid memes while
Right.
they're trying to pay him, right?
Right.
But not
Right.
enough.
Right.
The notion that the Deshaun Watson thing was going to screw everything up. Then he comes into camp. Things are fine. They're playing football. It's all good. But the sign in the hall down in the aisleway in week 8, where he's holding up the pay me sign, and then the injury, and then everything that happened after the injury, which is him hiding for 5 days after the tweet that got me thrown off of Twitter back at Thanksgiving, and somewhere between 1 to 3 weeks, I don't trust. There's a trust issue, right? And I've talked
Right.
about this a lot all week long, right? In 19, the theme for that team was big trust, right? I am assuming, I don't necessarily speak Urban Dictionary, but I'm assuming trust didn't mean a truss and a light rigging. It meant trust with a T. And I think there's really there was a trust problem in December, and something that probably was boiling and percolating through all of these things. And I would say at some point in December, they came to the conclusion that he was too hurt to play, wasn't going to play. They didn't like the way he's handling it. He didn't like the way they were handling it. And somewhere in there, sometime during the holidays, something went really awry with trust that has brought them to the point where I don't know how they're going to kiss and make up. You know what I mean? They're all
Right.
saying the right things, but I don't know how they're going to kiss and make up.
I know. I moved into like, how do you ensure value? Yeah, because I don't think he's playing for us again, but I need to maximize my value to deal him. And like, not going to the playoff game, that eroded value in the player. Like, he's either not a team player, or he's more hurt than we think, or he's walking around in a cast. Like, nobody's being honest here, blah, blah, blah. So
if he's sitting in a skybox and they're saying he's there and wanted to be with the team and didn't want to be on the
right, a
bench
distraction,
with his
sure.
knee and a distraction
Right.
and where he is, that would show me solidarity. What
Right.
him not being there the other night and him wildcatting the Twitter thing, right? The tweet,
But
I should say,
I would
right?
say, don't. I had to tell my kids this, right? My kids were all over it. Can't believe he didn't go and support his team. Because, like we're trying to instill those kind of values in my children.
Right.
And like, I'm like, well, look, hold on. We don't really know the story. Like the Ravens might have told him not to come. Yeah, you're too much of a distraction. Like we need to go do business. Come on, really, it'll be fine.
He was in
You know,
Pittsburgh 5 weeks ago when I was in the
I
locker
know,
room. I rubbed elbows with him. They were
I
all
know,
dancing to Latin music. They had just beaten the Steelers. He was there.
I get it. I don't. So,
And
but
I walked by him to make sure if he had something to say about me about the Twitter thing that I was available, because that's the journalist in me. The
right,
journalist in me is front-facing accountability after I write fire the coach. Or
if
whatever I write. I've never written fire the coach in
if
31 years.
somebody has hopes of re-signing him or getting him to play for us, then the other angle that they're playing is how do we diminish his perceived value to the outside world so that he has to come back in my office and say, hey, we need to get this done. Like, I don't really like what's going on right now. I'm not,
There's no
super.
diminishing him, dude. They're going to shine him up and they're going to deal him off at some point in March to whoever makes him happy and makes them happy. I'm pretty convinced of that. Like, if
Yeah,
there's a kumbaya and he's back here playing playoff game, first off, if there's a kumbaya, it's because they gave him more money than anybody, right? I
I don't think
and I think
I don't think any business person can do that at this point. Like with him not playing in November and December for the last 2 or 3 years or whatever the injuries are. I don't think you can do that. I mean,
if you're
I
Steve,
if I'm
but
Bashotti
if you're Stephen
and
Ross in Miami and you're trying to sell tickets,
oh yeah, sure,
or if
I can
Tom
make a
Brady
case.
retires and Tampa Bay
No,
doesn't
no,
have an
no.
offensive coordinator or a quarterback, right?
No. I have all the information, right? He's been in my meetings. He's been in my training rooms. I know what the deal is with the guy. If I'm Bashotti and DaCosta goes and does that, I'm going to DaCosta saying, dude, have you lost your mind? Like, you just wrote us, we might make the playoffs, maybe, but we're going to lose in the first round every year because we aren't going to be able to pay our defense. We're not going to be able to pay receivers. Not going to be able to pay, So, I think DaCosta's got a 20-year, 30-year run ahead of him. So he's playing the long game. There's no relegation if you don't make the playoffs. So
I don't believe that they believe that he will win the Super Bowl here, be healthy enough to win the Super Bowl, be happy enough here. And I also know this. I don't know that they believe in the experiment anymore.
I
They were
hear you.
calling it, they went from
Right.
calling it an experiment. Harbaugh went from calling it an experiment to a revolution in
Right.
6 months, right?
Right.
It went from an experiment to 18 months, right? It went from an experiment to a revolution to an experiment again, because the night they drafted him, we talked about this. The morning after he ran into linebackers in that Hall of Fame game out in Canton, Ohio, when Luke and I were up in that little
Right.
press box, and we're like, oh my God, he got hit
Right.
3 times harder than I've ever seen a quarterback get hit in a purple uniform, and it's July.
Right.
And you know what I mean? Like, so knowing all of that, I don't think they believe they can pay a quarterback $48 million, that they can recruit wide receivers, because they can't recruit a wide receiver in this offense. That's part of the experiment that I don't know. When Eric was getting his Sigma-Dells together and his uber sabermetrician Hopkins scientists who are going to analyze all the analytics, that they looked at this and said, we're going to draft wide receivers into this system because
Right.
we're never going to be able
Force
to.
them to play. Right. Force them to
Because
come
we're
here.
never going to be able. And even when we draft one whose best bunkies with our quarterback, he ain't going to want to play here anymore.
Well,
This
and
kid wants the ball, and he's
we
26 years old now.
we can sign all the Sammy Watkins and Deshaun Jacksons who can't get a contract anywhere else and hope we catch lightning in a bottle. It will be considered, 20 years from now, they look back. It won't be a revolution, but the game definitely changed because of the success that Lamar and Colin Kaepernick before him were able to have in changing the way offenses played, even if it's just merely from the fact that there's this whole other playlist that now the defense has to prepare
It's
for, which makes
changed
it
the
harder.
size and the category of football players defensively. It's changed linebackers and safeties, and it has changed everything about the size of a human. You look at Roquan Smith, you're like, he looks like Ray Lewis, like if you let the air out of him a little bit, right?
Right,
Like
right.
literally.
He does
And
look
Ray
small.
was too small to play
Right,
linebacker
right.
25 years ago. Now that they want a team full of strong
Speed.
safeties. They
Yeah,
want a team
speed.
full of Kyle Hamilton.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think when you accept that you're drafting Lamar, you know that that has like a 0.5% chance of ending well, right? Like the number of
Well, you'd
ways,
say that in any case of drafting a
probably.
quarterback, right?
Yeah,
How
probably,
many quarterbacks
probably.
drafted on draft night are going to win a Super Bowl? Not many when Brady was alive, right? I mean, like
Sure,
literally Brady. And if Brady weren't alive, Manning would have won 4 of those. Like
but
literally, right? So
your percentages are higher if you don't add in the fact that part of the skill set is the running, which means, they could get vicked at any time, right? They can get a broken leg or whatever. And, and that, not that the other quarterbacks aren't exposed to that. It's just our percentages are much higher for this guy. So it was probably all going to end poorly at some point. And they all had a meeting somewhere in middle of December and said, maybe now is when it was going to end poorly, because why would we pay $200 million for it to end poorly 4 years from now?
well,
So
and I also think they don't think this kid's going to be able to handle the heat when the heat gets hot, and they give him $200 million, and the bright lights get. I mean, he was a much better player as an underdog.
if
He
if
was a much better
he
sell to the community as an underdog than the same way with Joe Flacco. The minute Flacco got the money, we all forgot he won the Super Bowl.
right, if Lamar would agree to take 15 million a year, and I could go pay someone slightly better than Tyler Huntley another 10 million a year, and literally like not play Lamar to ensure that he's available for the playoffs. So one game on, one game off, one game on, one game off, whatever kind of goofy
They do with
system
running backs, essentially.
Yeah, right. Whatever kind of goofy, right. Third
Do you
down
care about
quarterback.
J.K. Dobbins? You're not giving him the
Right.
ball 32 times a game.
Yeah, I mean, like whatever kind of goofy system you could create. I do believe that Lamar has the ability to win, 3 or 4 games in a row, be really special, go on a Flacco-esque 11 touchdown, 0 interception kind of run and win the Super Bowl and just dazzle the universe. I do believe he has that in him.
He ain't doing
The
it with
problem
Deshaun
is,
Jackson and Demarcus Robinson and right.
correct. And he's not going to do it after 17 weeks of getting the shit beat out of it. Right? He's not going to step up and be able to do it after that. So that's the problem.
Well, for all of these reasons, I think we've pointed out. Now, who's the buyer?
Yeah.
Who's the
I love the Miami story. I mean, if they can work it out so that it fits for at least 1 year with Waddle and Tyreek Hill, like holy cow, that there are no excuses at that point. I mean, and they were good, right? Like they beat us. They made the playoffs. I mean, they were a pretty good team. So I like the Miami one.
You done with football now? You done?
No, I mean, I'll watch. I'm curious. There's enough, like the best teams aren't so much better than everyone else that there's just a runaway and it's boring because the Chiefs are going to win again. Like I don't feel that way. There's a part of me that likes rooting for the Bills. I got a buddy up there who's a Bills Mafia maniac. So, I got,
I know people here hate the Bengals now. All of a sudden, it's kind of cool. Like it's like,
right.
man, I'm old
Right.
enough to remember. I never thought anybody hate the Bengals, but
Right.
and I'm not a Bengal hater. I kind of like that kid. I think he's got some moxie that I like if he were my quarterback in some way.
I like to hate him. I like to hate him.
Okay, fair
Right?
enough.
Like,
See, I don't love Josh Allen. Funny enough, you know what I mean? Like as players, I like
yes.
Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I think you can't hate him. He's kind of like Peyton Manning, is a little bit other than the Colt helmet. Like hating
I
on
think I'll
Peyton.
always feel sorry for the Bills, right? Like
Will
part
you
of
in
my
4 weeks if they win the Super Bowl? I mean, that's the greatest story ever. They're a better story than the Chiefs by far.
yeah,
And I
but
guess my
just
point with the
my
Bengals was I don't think the Bengals can win now because of
right.
the injuries. I just
Agreed.
see them as lame
Agreed.
duck. So
Agreed.
I do want to see the Bills and the Chiefs get together in Atlanta next weekend and flood the city and play the Peach Bowl all over again.
So weird. But I think part of my youth, Jim Kelly and the Bills, like there's no way I will never not feel sorry for the Bills, right? I'll always feel sorry for them. So something about that makes them, somebody that you want to root for. Like there's like I can't imagine how that would have been if that was my team, right? Like they were my team in a lot of those
We didn't
years.
have a team. It was
Right. So
1989.
you had to pick, right? Do you pick the Giants or you pick the Bills? Well, you definitely pick the Bills, like Thurman Thomas, Jim Kelly, like they
Yeah,
were
I was at
likable,
the championship game when they won 51-3 when they beat Jay
right?
Schrader.
Right.
Sig and I talk about it all the time. I have Sig out on the crab cake tour at Gunpowder Lodge. I guess that was back in October in that range. And he
Right.
came out and we talked about that day because I went to Buffalo for Oilers games. I was not at the comeback
Sure.
game. I was with Rasig at that, but the year before the Oilers lost up there, I was at that game, and I went back for the championship game, the Art Shell game, and I'm telling you, man, I have never been in a place where like if you couldn't find a girl that night and have a good time, I mean, the whole city was, I mean, I
Right.
was 20 years old,
I
21 years old,
got you.
1989.
I got
It
yeah.
was just an on fire. I drove
Yeah.
6 hours to Buffalo, and all of a sudden my team's going to this. It wasn't my team, but like I'm
Oh
there,
yeah.
drinks,
Yeah.
fun, fans, girls, like
Yeah.
all of that. Zubaz back in the day, Thurman Thomas. And then
Right.
I sat at Rasig's house watching them get beat and watch the ball sail, and I was like, you know.
Right. I
And to
get it.
think that, my life's this 35 years later, and they still won.
Right. That's what I mean. So even if they win, I'm not sure that doesn't still make me feel sorry for them. So, and the NFC's a little bit, like whatever. None of
I
them
don't
are
need the
all that.
Eagles again. I don't need
Yeah,
that.
that none of that's really
And I don't need the
compelling.
Cowboys either. I don't need that. Definitely don't need
The
that.
the 49ers, like I don't know. There's not a
It'd be fun the
lot.
Bills beating the Cowboys, though. That might be fun. In the Super Bowl, I'm saying. Like, let the
Right, I got
Cowboys
you.
people get worked up and then break their heart. That'd be all right.
Okay, all right. That's a little bit mean, but okay. I can get there.
They're Cowboys fans, dude.
All
I mean,
right, I
come
got you.
on. I mean,
I got
stop.
you.
They win all.
Okay.
Oh, they never win. That's right. I was gonna say they win all the time. Bill Cole is here. He's Cole Roofing and Gordy Energy. Give me a little roofing update here because it's winter time, and I know, like, it's been in the 40s. It's been pretty pleasant, but I remember 2 days before Christmas as being like, I'll never
Cold,
forget how cold I
cold.
was 2 days before
It was
Christmas,
really
man.
cold. Well, before I go there, I want to come back to something you said earlier. This will be a warning. This might be the useful part of our discussion or
Okay.
not. Um, you were talking about the fact that you reached out to your teacher and, had a meaningful reconnection, and part of that relationship.
It was better
I
than
just,
meaningful. I would say it was the best. It was my favorite night of the year so far. It's been a
right.
short year, but I would say it's my favorite night in the past 8 months. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. I haven't done a whole lot
Well,
of
and,
fun things, but yeah.
and I have no idea how his life is right now, but he might say it's the best night he's had in 20 years, right? Like when you get to 82, I don't know how much fun you're having. Maybe he's great, right?
He
Maybe he has
had
lots.
so
So,
much fun that it'll make me
right,
cry if I talk about it.
right.
Like, I
So,
can't believe I haven't thought of doing more things like that. It was like my mother was alive
yes,
again. I was like hanging out
yes,
with my mother again.
yes.
It was like that, very much so, psychologically, if you're gonna Dr. Melfi me as you usually do.
No, no, no. So I just got done listening to another podcast, and it was about this Harvard study on happiness that is like the longest human study that's ever, like the subjects started in like in like 1939. So they've like followed these people through their whole life. They've picked up their spouses and kids and then expanded the study and brought in more groups and all. So it's this huge data set, right? And there's lots of stuff that they haven't had a chance to analyze, like, I don't know, how important are pets to your happiness and all this, just sort of
All that
eccentric
East
stuff.
Coast liberal bias stuff. Yeah,
Right.
sure,
But
right.
fundamentally, once you get beyond some obvious stuff, the people who were the most happy were the ones who had meaningful relationships. And it didn't mean like the people who had the most were the happiest, right? Because it really depends on who you are. So for an introvert, right, if they could have like more than one, two, three, five meaningful relationships, they could potentially land in that extremely happy category over their life. For and you know, for an a the opposite of introvert
Extrovert.
is, thank
That's
you.
me.
Right. An extrovert, 150 meaningful relationships, right? Like the more the better, or whatever that is, but meaningful. And the concept of the people who spent time and effort minding those relationships were the ones who seemed to be more happier. So you can know lots of people, but if there's no effort into grabbing coffees, just catching up, spending an evening doing something crazy, whatever, that just didn't hit the
By the
number
way,
for them.
man, write this down right now. I just gave you your accelerant speech for next month right there. There's your Thursday morning, right?
I don't
Perfect,
have to go
right? Is
anywhere, right?
that
Um,
good?
yeah, that's wonderful. And then the only other thought I had,
Depth of connection is, I mean,
I
it's
get it.
a
It's
wonderful
yeah,
concept. And I think after the plague, even more valuable, right?
yeah, and just that affirmation that we all know. And this is, they say it all the time, like marriage is hard, you got to work at it, right? Like we know this. We know that having meaningful relationships takes energy and effort and stick to
Sometimes
itiveness and
causes disappointment and dismay and
right,
anger and
right.
frustration.
So we
And
know that. And
right.
sometimes we just need to be reminded. But yeah, and then the other thing I thought of that I wanted to do, which is totally not a very good transition, but whatever, is we should have a book club comment every time we get together, because like there's always good books and people are always looking for good books. So but
I'm not
my
reading
good book
anything right
isn't
now, but I have read a lot of books in my life.
right. So here's my comment, which you can distill this and we can talk about it next time or something, and the all the millions of listeners can just grind on it. But smart guy told me, I don't know, a month or two ago, he only reads two books and he reads them both over and over again. And the whole idea is that these two books, in his opinion, right, are the secrets to life.
The
And
Bible and the Art of War.
no,
Okay, I'm just checking.
how to win friends and influence people,
Fair enough.
and
Carnegie.
think and grow
You
rich.
can go rich. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
They're both on my bookshelf.
right. And I haven't read Think Grow Rich, but I read the other one a long time ago. So I'm rereading that now. And he's right. Like they're fundamental things. And the
The
idea
road
that
less traveled, and there's like all sorts of things like that. I
the
come back
idea
to
that you
Tony
have to
Robbins whenever I need a little dip. He's doing a thing next week, a big week-long thing. I may or may not participate. I may because I'm feeling it, right? I mean,
right.
I'm having some interesting things going on here as I try to expand
Right.
what I'm doing. So yeah, opening my mind. I had one of the greatest American authors on last week. I had James Patterson on with Mike
Right.
Lupica, and I spoke to them because they've written a book of fiction.
Right.
I like admitted to the greatest writer. I'm like, I haven't read a fiction book since maybe like East of Eden. Like literally, like I don't read fiction.
Oh, I mix in Tom Clancy all the time.
See,
Like
I just
he's
don't. I just don't.
yeah.
I
I
am
do it
much
just
more to
for the
read Think and
fun
Grow Rich
story.
again than I am to read
Yeah.
or a biography. Now I will read true stories of
Sure.
success, people
Sure.
telling their I like that thing. I mean, if it's a rock and roll about a band or whatever, I'll read that kind of stuff.
I love those. Right.
Yeah, yeah, rock
I love
docs.
those. I mean, ultimately one of my objectives is I got to read to go to sleep. So it can't be
Oh,
too
okay.
work oriented. It can't be too work oriented. Otherwise, I just stay up all night thinking about it. So there you go. There's
That would be the best way for me to read at the end of the night, get 10 pages, 15, crash out. All right, good advice. Bill Cole telling me to read
fun
more,
stuff.
which is the same thing Jim Patterson told me last week when I had him on, and we got to talking about things. As a guy who writes stuff, I'm trying to produce it, not consume it at this point.
Right.
Bill Cole will get up on your roof, take great care of you on your business. It does commercial roofing as well as Gordian Energy and all things. Like, listen to the ads. I'm on a time constraint, Bill. You know I love
It's
you.
all good, man. It's all good.
We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.